While many perceive the West as Russia's primary concern, China emerges as a silent contender. Unraveling this dynamic, we'll explore the underlying factors that position China as Russia's most significant challenge. China and Russia have a long, intricate history. Sometimes they're buddies, and sometimes not so much. Over the past decade, they've been getting pretty friendly, but some folks are scratching their heads, asking, is this for real? They think it's more about their mutual beef with the US than genuine love for each other. And guess what? The recent Russian invasion of Ukraine? That might just be a game changer for their relationship. Let's rewind a bit. Remember when Putin and Xi declared their partnership had no limits? Yes, that happened. And they've met over 40 times since 2012. Talk about BFFs! But here's the twist. China didn't exactly give Russia a standing ovation at the UN over Ukraine. They didn't condemn them either. It's like they're playing it cool, you know? And if we go way back, these two had their fair share of territorial tiffs. It wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. So, what's the deal with their current alliance? Is it just a you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours situation? Or is there more beneath the surface? Senior Chinese officials have recently been vocal about backing Russia's concerns regarding NATO's expansion in Eastern Europe. They're pointing fingers at the US and NATO, suggesting they're prolonging the conflict by arming the Ukrainians. It's like blaming someone for adding fuel to a fire. And while Russia's been having a tough time exporting oil and gas to Europe, guess who swooped in to fill that gap? Yes, China. Before all the war chaos, they've increased their energy purchases from Russia by a whopping 60% compared to last year. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Russia and China even conducted joint air patrols near Japanese and South Korean defense zones to show their unity in May 2022. And guess what? This happened right when Joe Biden was visiting US allies in Asia. Talk about timing, right? Beijing and Moscow have been getting cozier for years, even before Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Their relationship is evolving, almost like they're dating, moving closer to a more official alliance. And honestly, it makes sense. Both countries have similar goals and face common challenges, especially regarding the US. But here's another twist. While they might be buddies now, history tells us that China and Russia have been more like frenemies. Their current alliance is a bit out of character, but times change, right? Now, let's talk geography for a second. Russia has always wanted to control as much of the Eurasian steppe as possible. It's a vast flat land that's been a strategic hotspot for centuries. Russia had the upper hand during the Cold War, but things shifted after the Soviet Union's collapse. NATO expanded and Russia felt cornered. So, they made some moves, like invading Georgia in 2008 and Ukraine in 2014 and 2022. It's like a chess game, with each side trying to outmaneuver the other. On the flip side, China's got its challenges. They're keen on taking control of Taiwan and ensuring a steady flow of resources for their booming economy. But the US is a major roadblock. The US has created a containment ring around China with allies like Taiwan, Japan, South Korea, and the Philippines. And here's where the China-Russia duo shines. They complement each other perfectly. China has the population and economy but lacks natural resources. Russia, on the other hand, is resource-rich but lacks capital. It's like peanut butter and jelly, separately good, but together they're unstoppable. But, and there's always a but, this alliance might not last forever. Historically, China and Russia have been more like rivals than allies. So, while they're BFFs, who knows what the future holds? Let's roll into a fascinating tale down the history lane of how these two giants, Russia and China, shaped their relationship over the centuries. Back in the 13th century, Russia faced the wrath of the Mongol conquest. Yes, that's right. Russia's conflicts with East Asia aren't something new. They date back centuries, even before their tussles with Japan in 1905 and 1945. Now, regarding long histories, China isn't far behind either. And what history are we talking about? Well, it is the period many Chinese folks call the Century of Humiliation. Sounds intense, right? Between 1839 and 1949, China was, let's say, not having the best time. They were fragmented, weak, and at the mercy of foreign powers. It was during this tumultuous century that Britain got its hands on Hong Kong and Japan took over Taiwan and Manchuria. However, according to the official Chinese Communist Party narrative, this humiliation only ended in 1949. That's when they finally had a win, establishing the People's Republic. But guess what? Many of the territories they lost during this period remained lost. Taiwan, for instance, was still out of Beijing's grasp, and Hong Kong was chilling under British rule until 1997. Now, here's a term you might find interesting: unequal treaties. The Chinese Communist Party wasn't too fond of these agreements that made China give up land during its rough patch. And the irony? One of the most unequal treaties came from none other than their current buddy, Russia. Flashback to 1858. The Qing dynasty in China was juggling a massive civil war and fighting the Second Opium War against the British and French. Sensing an opportunity, Russia, being the opportunist, demanded a massive piece of land known as Outer Manchuria, and China, not wanting another war, gave in. This land, equivalent to the size of Ukraine, was handed over without a single shot fired. Crazy, right? This region turned out to be a goldmine for the Russians. They founded significant cities like Khabarovsk and Vladivostok, which became the home base for the Russian Pacific Fleet. But this treaty had its downsides for China. They lost direct access to the Sea of Japan, limiting them to the East and South China Seas. Here's a fun what if for you. What if Russia never took over this region? Maybe, just maybe, the Sea of Japan would have been called the North China Sea. Food for thought, huh? For years, many Chinese nationalists, including Mao Zedong, the founder of the People's Republic of China, remembered this loss. And by the 1960s, the relationship between China and the Soviet Union began to sour. They disagreed on many things, including the interpretation of Marxism-Leninism. Mao even hinted that the Russian annexation of Outer Manchuria was another unequal treaty. Things got heated in 1969 over a tiny island in the river. Both countries claimed it, leading to battles and thousands of artillery rounds fired. It was a tense period, with the world fearing a full-scale nuclear war. But, like all things, this too passed. The border dispute was finally settled in 1991. However, history has shown that borders and treaties can change. Just look at Russia and Ukraine. Despite multiple treaties, Russia annexed parts of Ukrainian territory based on historical claims. Moving on, we look into these two giant nations' geopolitics, resources, and strategic interests. Have you ever heard of the term Pandora's box? It's an ancient Greek myth about a box that, when opened, released all the world's evils. Now, imagine if China decided to metaphorically open its own Pandora's box by revisiting its historical claims to Outer Manchuria. Crazy thought, right? But that's not the only point of contention between these two giants. After the Soviet Union's collapse, 5 new countries emerged in Central Asia. Once under Moscow's influence, these countries have slowly drifted towards Beijing. Why? China has been playing the long game with its Belt and Road Initiative, aiming to revive the ancient Silk Road trade routes across Central Asia. And guess what? Central Asia is a goldmine for hydrocarbon resources like oil and gas. China, with its ever-growing economy, needs these resources to keep its engines running. However, are you aware that pipelines have been built from countries like Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, and Kazakhstan, all directing their flow eastwards to China? It's like a massive funnel, channeling about 15% of China's natural gas demand. This shift has allowed China to reduce its dependence on riskier sea routes. China is now the top customer for Turkmenistan's and Uzbekistan's natural gas supplies. Remember, these were countries once under Moscow's rule. Now, they compete with Russia in the natural gas trade, especially in the Chinese market. But it's not just about resources. Geopolitical control over Central Asia has been crucial for Russia for centuries. Why? Because it's a gateway, a passage, if you will, for potential invaders. But with China's growing influence in the region, Russia is on the back foot. Let's shift our focus a bit. Have you ever thought about the importance of water? For China, it's a looming crisis. Despite housing 20% of the world's population, China only has access to about 7% of the world's fresh surface water. And most of it is in the south. The North China Plain, home to over 400 million people, faces a water scarcity similar to desert countries like Saudi Arabia. And climate change? It's only making things worse. In 2022, the Yangtze River, China's lifeline, saw its lowest rainfall levels since 1961. It's a stark reminder of the challenges ahead. So, where can China turn to for water? The Himalayan regions of India, Nepal, and Bhutan are potential sources. But there's a catch. Relations with these countries are tense, and India faces water challenges with its massive population. Any move by China in this direction would undoubtedly lead to conflict. So, moving on to the dynamics between these two giant nations, why exactly is China perceived as a significant threat to Russia? Well, China has emerged as a formidable global power, challenging the United States on multiple fronts. According to a CBS News article post, the Director of National Intelligence, Avril Haines, described China as a near-peer competitor challenging the United States in multiple arenas while pushing to revise global norms in ways that favor the authoritarian Chinese system. This rise of China has implications for the US and Russia as the balance of power shifts. Also, China's military modernization has been rapid and expansive. The assessment indicates that China will likely double the size of its nuclear stockpile in the next decade. Furthermore, China's ballistic missile arsenal has become more survivable, more diverse, and on higher alert than in the past. This includes nuclear missile systems designed for regional escalation and ensuring an intercontinental second strike capability. Such advancements could threaten Russia's strategic interests in the region. China's assertive stance in the South China Sea is a testament to its growing confidence. The report highlights that Beijing will continue to intimidate rival claimants and will use growing numbers of air, naval, and maritime law enforcement platforms to signal to Southeast Asian countries that China has effective control over contested areas. Such actions could challenge Russia's influence in the Asia-Pacific region. China's economic, technological, and diplomatic clout is being used to secure its interests, often at the expense of other nations, including Russia. The FBI director, Christopher A. Wray, noted a significant increase in economic espionage tied to the Chinese government. Additionally, China's current space innovation, as they are actively working on their space station and anti-satellite weapons, indicates its ambition to challenge U.S. leadership in space, which could also impact Russia's space endeavors. The dynamics between China and Russia are complex. While they may collaborate on certain fronts to counterbalance the US, underlying tensions arise from China's rapid ascent as a global superpower. Russia, with its historical desire to maintain influence in its near, abroad, and beyond, will undoubtedly view China's ambitions with caution. If you enjoyed this deep dive, why not hit that like button and share it with your friends? And if you want to stay updated on this evolving story, make sure to subscribe. Oh, and don't forget to check out our next video for more insights. Your support means a lot. It helps us bring more content like this to you. So, what do you think? How will this geopolitical chess game play out? Drop your thoughts in the comments below.